be easy with the throttle.
Do you want one now?
Yes, most definitely.
It's kilometers, so I don't know how fast I'm going. Strangely enough, I like it. Like yells at you, vehicle speed too high.
Something very interesting and unexpected today. A CFMOTO 450. And today, we're gonna let my man David, way over there, ride the Ninja. When you think of a Chinese bike, what do you think? Exactly, that's not the case. This bike actually impressed me. I think it's a perfect balance of handling and power at the beginner level. Let's get some miles on these two bikes and we can talk about it.
Oh, look at that startup screen, man. That's cool. I like the sound already. It's kilometers, so I don't know how fast I'm going. 2023 CFMOTO 450 SS. Don't know anything about this bike. I don't know anything about these Chinese bikes. I have no expectation. The only expectation that I have is simply the fact that it's a Chinese product lends me to think that there's like some sort of difference in quality from Japanese bikes or American bikes. And initially, from looking around this thing, just doing a quick walk around, first and foremost, it looks really good. I'm gonna put some pictures right here. I can't see anything exterior wise that would lend me to think that this is a cheap quality bike. The fairings actually look good. They feel nice and thick. Even the little winglets that are right there have a solid like feel to them. I could say the controls are maybe a little plasticky, but I got gloves on, so I can't even feel that. Definitely the clutch lever and the brake lever are like some sort of composite material, to where they're not like solid metal. But even then, man. So yeah, the clutch lever pull is very light. My first 30 seconds impressions on this thing. Taking off, the bike is fairly narrow, expected for a 450. Anything that's a 450, you expect the bike to be narrow. This is. It's exactly what you would expect out of a 400 type bike. The clutch lever pull is very light. The brake lever pull is actually fairly light too. The rear brake is firm compared to the front. And the bike goes effortlessly. It accelerates relatively smoothly. It doesn't seem like the engine's lugged very much. The bike is very light. It's balanced all the way through. There's not really a dead spot. I would say that it takes a little bit of effort to get the bike to tip in any direction, but it is very light. Not that it's difficult, but it takes a little bit of pressure. You have to guide it into the lean just a touch, and then it kind of continues for it. Like the Ducati that I recorded last week, that bike doesn't take a lot of bar input to get the bike to move, but they move the same. This one just takes a little bit more bar input to get it to go side to side. This is absolutely nothing. If I've ever seen nothing before, this is it.
All right, so we got David here. He just got off riding the Ninja, the ZX6, first 600 he's ridden. He's ridden a few other bikes, but what was your experience on a 600 for an extended period of time?
I loved it. I was comfortable the whole time. No pressure on my, forearms or nothing like that, but it's fast.
Seems well put together, man. Everything's solid. I don't feel vibration. Yeah, I don't feel it in the handlebars. I feel it in my feet on the pegs, and I feel it on my legs right here on either side. Like I feel it in the tank. When I give it a little bit of throttle, I can feel the slight vibration, but for sure my hands don't feel it. The seat is actually pretty comfortable, similar to what you'd expect to a modern bike, but it is actually a little bit more soft and cushy. I don't feel like this is gonna upset me in any way, shape, or form. Yeah, and the engine revs really freely, pulling the clutch, and the RPMs just kind of fall into place. It revs very freely. Transmission is butter. The transmission just pops into gear. It does not give you a very strong, satisfying click when you get into gear, but it's very light and you feel it hit the end range. So you can tell it's in gear, not because it clicks into gear, but because of the abrupt stop when you actually get to the end of the travel. It's a fairly short travel. It's a very light pull on the shifter lever. Heck yeah, man. We're gonna be on this bike for like 2 hours. So I'm gonna come back later, let you guys know what I think after I've had some mileage on the bike. Look at this. This is kilometers. That's not the accurate speed, but when you go too fast, it yells at you. After 120. It yells at you, vehicle speed too high.
right? I just got off of riding this thing for about an hour and a half, and I am pleasantly surprised. Let's talk about it some more.
So back on this thing, earlier I rode this thing for like an hour just to get some good feels on it, and I am absolutely pleasantly impressed. My go-to bias was simply that it's a Chinese machine, so I expected it to be lacking in quality, not refined, just the general stigma that comes with Chinese products. And this is 100% not the case. I did not get this feel on this bike at all. From originally riding it, looking around the bike, I was actively looking for something to tell me that this bike was a low quality bike, that it was lacking in some way, shape, or form. And I wasn't able to find it. Literally looking around, everything looks to be solid. It's a tubular chassis, which is perfectly fine for a light 400 like it is. This is a beginner bike, so that's what I'm judging it as. The weights and inputs and everything are consistent with exactly what it's supposed to be, which is a beginner bike. As I said before, when you first get on this thing, everything is nice and soft and gentle. The inputs are really soft. The throttle's light, the clutch lever's light, the brake lever's light, the shifter's light, the bike maneuver's light, but none of it is cheap light. Everything it's just light. It's a beginner bike. It's supposed to be easy to handle, and it is. Now, I will say this, in terms of power, this thing has an upgraded intake and it has an acro exhaust. It is just a slip-on, it's not a full exhaust. So that has a little bit to do with the fact that it's like a little tiny bit faster than it would be, but it's still slow. I mean, it's a 450, right? Compared to other parallel twins, the power on this thing doesn't seem like it drops off at the very top. The other twins that I've ridden have a lot of torque down low, which this does for a beginner bike, of course, but it tapers off at the top. I feel like this thing is geared properly to where the top end isn't running out of the power band of this bike. So it's geared to where the top end of the power band actually matches the top speed of the bike. It doesn't feel like it tapers off as you get close to the top. Obviously, as a 600 that has a progressive power band, the more throttle you give it. You see this? You see this? I didn't strap my fucking helmet. Obviously, on the 600, it has a progressive throttle, a progressive power band. The more throttle you give it, the more power it gets. The higher in the rev range it goes, the more power it gets. So it's like you just get more progressively as you go up. This isn't progressive. It gives you a nice little bite of torque, and it kind of flattens out, but you get the same level of acceleration at where we are now, 5,500 RPMs, as you do as you rev through the power band.
Yeah.
How do you like it compared to that, right? So a CFMOTO would be like a beginner bike, which is, I think, a perfect entry level. How do you feel like that as a segue to this?
Yes, jumping off of this to this with up more power and everything?
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Do you think it's like a comfortable step up from what you got from that until this, or do you still think that there should be something to fill in that gap?
No, I think if so, you jumped off of this and went straight to this, I think you should be good. Just mastered this, and then you should be able to tame this.
Chinese bike, bam, made in China, like everything. The power, it has enough power. I mean, it's a slow bike, it's a beginner bike, right? It's not gonna keep up with the 600, but from second, third, fourth, fifth, it gives you a consistent amount of acceleration that doesn't drop off at the top. I personally think that it's a good amount for somebody that hasn't had a lot of experience. You have to work the throttle to get the power, which means that if you're sloppy with your wrist, you can accidentally give it too much throttle and you're not going to get thrown off the bike, you're not going to move around. But it does have enough torque to where when you give it throttle, and we're going 70 miles per hour, you can actually accelerate and go past some cars. Single Brembo caliper in the front. I do not know what size the rotor is, but the brake lever is a soft pull, but it's a consistent pull and you know exactly where it's at. The bike does well under heavy braking. It can actually stop. No, it doesn't stop like a 600, but it stops well for the amount of speed that you can get with this bike. The brakes aren't too weak for the speed that the bike has. The brakes are perfectly balanced with the amount of speed you can get out of the bike. You hit the brakes, it dives, it stops, it stops well. I like the rear brake on this thing. I like a firm rear brake. I didn't lock this one up, but it's a firm press and you can feel it starts to shave off speed. I'm going 70, and then this is all rear brake. Let off the throttle, rear brake. So you can shave off speed fairly quickly if you need to. It's a good form of stopping. You shave off a lot more with the front, but you could simply use the back for slow speed stuff like I like to do, and it'll get the job done. I don't know what the top speed on this thing is. I think it's like 110 or 115 or something like that. So it's not high, but it's more than enough for literally all the situations that you get yourself in. Strangely enough, I think this is like a damn good beginner bike. It is everything that you kind of want and need for that first little bit of riding that you do. I think this isn't a bike that like a 300 that you'll require more, I don't know, to go like highway speeds and stuff. This bike you can get as a new rider, enjoy through a decent amount of time, from your slow rides to actually starting to go a little bit more quickly, or aggressive spirited rides where you take it through some nice bendies and twisties and it has enough torque to kind of do that. So you can actually have different levels of rides on this and begin to push your boundaries from handling and braking. You can gain that comfort nicely over time. And that screen is crisp and clear. It's a very good quality screen. We've been riding, the sun's right there. I haven't seen a glare in the screen at all. It's been perfect. Honestly, I think the front end actually looks pretty good. I think the headlights look pretty good. I think the winglets, I don't know if they serve a purpose, but they look fairly good. They're not cheap in terms of like, they don't feel like they're gonna break off or snap off. They're fairly sturdy, they're mounted properly. I literally haven't found anything on this bike to where I'm like, yep, that's a bunch of corner cutting. Not any more than any other bike today. All manufacturers today are cutting corners to save costs, to make the bike cheaper. This is not doing it any more or less than what other manufacturers from Japan, from America, from Europe are doing. Now, I don't know how well it's going to hold its value or how well it's going to do over the course of time, if it'll stop breaking down or whatever. But right here, right now, this feels like a good quality motorcycle. I would go as far as say there's a decent level of refinement for the beginner category that it's in and the price point that it's at.
So another question, me personally, when I came into this, I was expecting the CFMOTO to be a cheap Chinese bike. It's all over the video. I've said it a couple times. It's a very good quality. It feels like a very refined motorcycle for what it is. What did you expect, this being your bike, from when you bought it to now that you've ridden it, you've put almost 4,000 miles on it? Like, yeah. What do you feel about the bike and what it is and what it has to offer?
I think it's an awesome bike. I did a lot of research before getting it. Yeah. It was in the Philippines for 2 years before it came to the States.
Okay.
So they did their homework. This is the second version they came out with, and it's awesome, you know?
So we're actually getting a second version of this bike. This isn't what it came out with originally. Are there any bugs or anything that you're aware of that like owners here in America have, or is there any like big recalls or any bugs that you know of?
No recalls, nothing. It runs great. Only thing I would suggest is get your oil filter 2-3 times ahead, because it's kind of hard to get.
Gotcha. So it's not like a common one that they use here in the States. Okay, yeah, understood.
So. Honestly, through these little back twisty roads here, this bike is so smooth, man. Even on the downshift, coming in, accelerating. This bike is smooth. It handles itself so well. Even right here, you just pitch it in, lean, and you can throttle through. I like it. This bike handles really well. I keep saying that this bike is surprising. It's because I expected it to be cheap and Chinese, and it's like, it has a decent level of refinement. I would be curious to ride a faster bike from them, a 600 or something along those lines, to where it's supposed to be a sporty sport bike, and see what it actually does. Because from what I got from this bike, I would be so interested to see what it can do on a bigger scale. And it may fall apart, because obviously this bike can't handle 600 speed, this chassis can't. But if they can make a 600 as balanced as this bike is with itself, I think that would be a damn good bike. The bike settles, the suspension sits, you hit the lean. I can lean more than this. The bike's tires aren't like too skinny, and it being a parallel twin, it means it has torque, so you can just carry it, give it throttle. I can even be in 3rd gear or even 4th gear through this. It has enough torque to kind of get you through the turn. As you turn in more and you start getting out of your turn, you want to pick up a little bit more speed to keep yourself leaned over. And even in 4th gear, you can go ahead and keep it increase. And I'm not shifting at all right now. This is all 4th gear, middle RPM, and it has the torque to do it. right there. Wow, it would have been better in third, of course, but it doesn't need to downshift to keep up at nice sweepers at a slower pace. You're not going to turn at 110, 120 miles an hour like you will a sport bike, a super sport, a 600. But dude, this bike is fun, man. I like it, especially on this little road. You just hit it and the bike maintains its angle. You can keep on going, and the inputs are nice, settled. You can feel the bike just sit very nicely. And since it's a low horsepower bike, you can use all of the throttle. You can maneuver all the way through it. You can modulate it very easily. When you're on a faster bike, you can't use that much throttle. You're a lot more consistent on the throttle and little bits up and down. This bike, you can actually have fun getting on it, getting off of it, because the speed change doesn't vary as much with throttle because it doesn't have as much power. But even here, man, look at that, slow down, second gear. This is all rear brake. I haven't used the front brake at all. Gotta sit back and accelerate. This is second gear. I'm gonna punch it all the way. The bike sounds good. Honestly, like I said, it's a 450. It's not fast, but it accelerates very smoothly. It's a great package. I am pleasantly surprised. This bike is 100% better than I expected it to be. I don't know why. I expected it to be cheaper. I expected it to be resembling of a dirt bike or something like that, to where it's like, it rattles, it shakes, it's, you know, put together, not very refined. It's meant to do a purpose and just get it out there. And this is not that. This bike has a decent level of refinement, plenty enough for a beginner bike. Sounds good. The way it delivers power, because it's a parallel twin, is nice and even. It's not upsetting. It's not peaky. It's torquey. It's all there. I think it's a fun bike. I would rate this at one of the better beginner bikes, honestly.
All right, well, for anybody that hasn't ridden a 600 before, that has experience, he has 3 bikes. This is one of them. He also has a cruiser, MT-07. So he has a couple different bikes. They're all technically slower than a 600, but definitely. For somebody that's stepping on this for the first time, any advice that you would give to somebody, or who should like jump on this bike? Like, what's the timing for actually getting on a 600?
Like I said, do your time, get to know this bike, you know, do your due diligence, and then after that, jump on here, just be easy with the throttle.
Do you want one now?
Yes, most definitely.
There you go, man. Everybody that gets on them loves them. They're their own thing. But thank you for that. Honestly, I wouldn't have had the experience to get on this. I didn't expect to do it. It was random. I was honestly curious to ride one after I saw them, but I haven't done any research. Like, even now, I still haven't done any research on it, and it absolutely blew away all of my expectations. Oh, yeah. If you guys like this video about the CFMOTO 450 SS, check out this review right here.